Topics may start earlier than specified unless there is a hearing. Meeting is being taped, and votes may be taken. If anybody is taking the meeting, please let us know. Okay. And my name is Rich Buchowitz.
Chris Potwell.
Mike Nelson, we're the Select Board.
I'm Steve Ellis, Town Administrator, and Wendy Bogus will not be with us this evening.
Okay, first item is minutes of July 22nd and August 5th. Do we have a good chance to look through those? Oh, do we have order?
I'm sorry. I thought you already had it.
Good job, Chris.
I was just looking and I said, I don't see it.
From an official transcript standpoint, we also do have the Vimeo, so we don't need to wait on this necessarily unless you'd like to.
All right, so first would be minutes of July 22nd and August 5th. Do we have a chance to look through those?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of July 22nd and August 5th, 2019. I would just add in one caveat that in the August 5th minutes, we had a sentence including that we did it by roll call vote because I was on the phone.
Yes.
And that was not in there.
Okay, we'll ask Wendy to note that.
I'll second that.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so voted. Okay, any public comments? Okay, next we have wastewater treatment. Is Kevin coming
Yes.
tonight, or are you gonna?
No, I'm gonna fill in for him. Couldn't make it.
Okay. So first, looks like you have a discharge permit for Light Life Food.
Right, so under the kind of direction of EPA and whatnot, they asked us to go review our permits to our CIUs, which is significant user, or SIUs, significant industrial users. So we went through it, Kevin went through it and with a fine-tooth comb and saw that we actually, some of the things in the permits were matching up with the sewer regs for Montague. So we made some adjustments on that. We also made some other adjustments that were kind of asked of us by the EPA Industrial Pretreatment Program. So we changed the pH requirements, reporting requirements per the town regs. And then we also reduced the amount of sampling to 1 time per week instead of 2 times per week, because it's just not, their industry's not changing. I mean, their product's not changing. It doesn't really make sense for them to be sampling that much. The only thing that we're requiring is that they don't sample on the exact same day and same time each time. We want to get them randoms, yeah. So there's a sheet that the chair of the sewer commission is to sign, and then I'll get that really quick. Sorry.
Let me turn that off.
Sorry. What was I? So, anyways, there is a sheet that where Light Life is going to be signing. They're not going to be signing the permit because another recommendation by the EPA, when they sign a permit, it becomes a contract. So it gives them more legal battle or status with us. So it's better to have them sign the sheet that's basically saying they received the permit, and they said that's how most of the industry is doing nowadays. So that was that part.
So that document to sign is here in this separate document.
I believe it is.
Wastewater for non-residential establishments.
Yeah. And so we're also redoing Great Falls aquaculture, and so that would be completed. We're actually going to do them all. We got to go through all of them, and we got to make sure that they're all up to speed and stuff. So that should be completed within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so
I'll
first
just,
thing here.
I'll just note that we only need the chair to sign this discharge permit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to authorize the chair to sign the discharge permit.
So moved. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So voted. And then the next document that we have is the permit renewal.
Right.
Okay. And does that need our signatures, or is that?
I don't believe so, Rich.
It's not flagged for signature.
That's to be signed by the user.
Right.
Okay.
And like I said, we're gonna do a cover sheet instead of signing a permit, so.
Right, okay, sounds good. And again, one question I had that I didn't ask, you've reviewed this with the folks up there, they feel they can meet these requirements?
Yeah, it's
Can you
actually,
set forth?
it's
Pretty-
actually easier for them to meet the requirements because the pH limits were a little tighter and now they're.
I saw they were like between 6 and 11. or
Right,
something
so
like
now
that.
it's based on our sewer regs and it's actually a little bit better for them, but it also holds them a little more accountable at the same time, so
Okay.
that's what we're trying to do.
Okay,
All right.
all right, next is staffing.
Staffing, so I decided to make a few staffing changes and instead of having a chief operator, I'm gonna go back to the way it was prior to, we had a lead operator and basically you're gonna have three people that are kind of like in a senior level. It's the lead operator, lab / industrial pretreatment coordinator, and lead mechanic. And so Kevin is gonna basically not be the chief operator anymore. He's going to be the industrial pretreatment coordinator. And to be honest with you, to have him try to be the chief operator and manage the lab and do industrial pretreatment was way too much to ask of him. His skill set and his value to me is as running a lab and doing the industrial pretreatment, and I really needed to focus on that. He wasn't able to be out in the process and run the process as a chief operator would do at a lot of plants. So I have a lot of good senior people out there already with my lead operator and my wastewater operator and my lead mechanic. So I feel at this time the best way to have this staff is to have three guys going across the board and then some people underneath them as laborers and wastewater operators. It will create a better fluency as far as coordination and communication and also within the staff, so.
Okay, does any of this need reviewed by the bargaining unit?
Well, yeah.
We wanted to make certain, we've had a preliminary conversation with their lead representative. This is something that Bob has already discussed with Kevin.
Yep.
And, you know, Bob quickly convinced me that this was much less about trying to get a job position to match the, you know, the particular skills of an individual. You might recall that we created that chief operator role 2 years ago as we were beginning to the formal pilot of the Montague process system. It was intended to be for someone who had that very specific knowledge, and it was frankly a much more complicated way to run a plant. Not having the option of running that process, we can now again continue to sort of work back towards a normal activated sludge treatment plant process and staffing.
And it basically puts me in more of the, not control of running the process of the plant, but of the everyday decisions and how we run that plant. So basically I'm going to take over for the chief operator, and I will work with the lead operator directly on our daily changes or process, how we run it, so.
How does the hierarchy work when you are not at the plant? Is there kind of a
It will be probably between the lead operator and Kevin. Kevin's good, still has the grade 7, so technically he is the one. The DEP always wants to see at least 2 grade 6 at a plant like this, so he would be really the one that would be kind of the one that, if there has to be a phone call to go to DEP on an emergency or something like that, he should really be the one that follows up on that.
And now the lead operator, all these positions are all lead positions, or? do
Yes,
we
they are.
shift?
Well, the lab industrial pretreatment, I kept it as an age, and the reason being is because the lab technician prior was in an age, and I felt it was more in line with, because the industrial pretreatment coordinator is also very administrative based, and it's not as like being out and running the physical plan of it. It's more about coordinating the programs and making sure that the industries are following along.
So lead operator and lead mechanic fit still within the
UE,
guidelines?
yeah,
And no
Absolutely.
supervisory or any of that?
Right.
Issues there?
yeah.
Okay, seems reasonable. I just wanted to try to ask them if anybody else has any questions.
It removes an intermediary, as Bob was describing, and
Yeah.
allows him to really manage the operation.
Okay.
So,
So there are some steps, but this is the direction, and we were just looking for the
Yeah.
board's view on it.
Okay with it? Yep. Seems like there's a nod around the room, so we'll do an official approval when it kind of gets all
yeah.
the i's dotted.
It's- We're not adding a position, we're not making the plant more expensive to operate. This is doing it within our existing staffing levels.
Okay. Good. And now you're looking for approval on the lab industrial pretreatment.
Right.
Position.
And, I don't seek absolute approval tonight, but I mean, it's for you guys to go through and mull over, and if you have any questions, I mean,
This will have to be discussed with the mage.
This is what we bring to NAGE. I
Right.
I looked at this prior to my being away for a week, and I haven't had a chance to review it since,
So
as
I think
carefully as
just-
it requires.
Do you have any questions about it, Michael?
Nothing immediate. Now is it?
So let's go through the process and then we'll
Yeah.
get it here for a formal
Yep,
approval.
yep.
Okay.
It would need to go to town meeting, as in bargain reclassification,
yeah.
because it affects the
So
classification.
we might be able to get
Town meeting on the radar for the fall? I know we talked about what.
It's on the agenda today for,
Oh, I will hold
I'll
that.
at the end, yeah. Okay,
excellent question.
okay, so
You
we'll
are on
hear
top
more
of
on
it.
that.
Yeah, and so the last item is sewer rates.
Oh, yeah, our favorite.
Since we're on it.
Is this a public hearing or just considered a public hearing? Do we have to post this as a public hearing, Steve?
All public hearings don't need to be advertised. Wendy attended to the details as per usual.
Yeah.
It is my assumption that she got them correct, but I had not reviewed
Let's wait till
that.
7:20 and we'll ask Chief Williams to speak up front and take care of his business with us. He's going to transfer each request.
And I know Wendy is probably watching as we go along, but I don't have my cell phone with me, so.
She hasn't texted me yet,
He'll
but
be texting Mike.
Okay.
she's usually right on top.
Ask her not to do that.
Okay, so you've got a transfer request.
Yeah, with her family, yeah. All right, good evening. Yep, I'm just here to make another request for a transfer for one of our reserve officers to go over to Greenfield, and that'll be Michael Williams. Chief Hague has 2 full-time positions that are open that he needs to fill, and we don't have any. We probably won't have any for a long time.
All right,
Make the motion to approve the request to Greenfields for Mike Williams.
I will second.
motion's made and seconded. Any discussion?
Effective date.
Effective date is today, August 8th. That's when it was submitted. Do you have a date that it needs to go into effect?
I thought okay, so this is what probably, I would make the effective date today.
Okay.
Make that motion effective today.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we're unanimous.
All right, thank you. And then we have the agreement between the Franklin County Sheriff's Office for control of the regional dog shelter. And we have an agreement that needs to be signed and a fee of $800 to be paid.
This is similar to the last couple of years?
Yep, this is every year. It's been $800 for a while. I don't think that's really changed for some
It
time.
looks like the same agreement.
Yes. Michael, any questions? No? Jeff?
I should probably know this, but what does that mean? Agreement for what?
Regional Dog Control Services. So this is, go ahead, you can explain it.
Each town that's involved in this.
Yeah,
has to sign an
Greenfield, us and Deerfield, we all signed an agreement with the Sheriff's Department. Yep.
This is not the dog office.
Correct. This
This
is,
is the shelter and that.
exactly. So the services that they provide, we bring the dogs up to there, they take over. That's what the $800 is for.
And we provide the facility.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
They had talked at one point about building a new facility up behind your place. Is that anything still on the radar, do you know?
No, I think that all went south when they learned they had to use a prevailing wage to build it.
Yep, that would do it.
And it was gonna be extremely expensive. 'Cause I think what they were looking at was to contract it themselves and to use the inmates to help build it, and so that went to the wayside.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Make a motion to execute the agreement between the sheriff's office for regional dog control services through June 30th, 2020 for $800.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so vote unanimous.
All right, thank you.
That's it.
Yeah, and just to let you know, the festival and Hold the Home Days went off pretty well. We only received one complaint about the music, and that was pretty early on. It was at 4:30 in the afternoon. Someone that lived on the street, but that was pretty much the only glitch.
Yeah, I drove through about 5:30 and traffic was free flowing, and I actually drove down
Center Street.
Center Street and couldn't even hear anything. I was
Yeah,
listening
okay.
to see if there was like
Yeah,
any music.
They had it positioned
I don't know if
pretty
I
well.
don't know if they just happened to be on a break or if it was just really well positioned, but it was nothing to be heard.
It's
I
good.
drove
It's
down
nice.
Center Street probably more like 7:30ish, and actually there was one of the guys on patrol was there and the officer on duty.
The
We were
detail.
both there, and so I stopped. And the only thing I observed was that Center Street was parking on both sides,
Yeah.
which I think if there's a future event of that size in town, whether it's this or anything that large, we might want to have parking restricted to only one side.
Yeah, I sent you guys an email, you probably haven't gotten it
Okay,
yet, and
okay.
I talked about some of the parking issues.
Yeah.
South of the Common, cars were parked on both sides of the road and parked on the sidewalk, which are forcing people to walk in the road, and then Center Street. Once the detail officer left his position there and went down to monitor what was going on, like 10 cars parked where he was.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So, with no one there to say, don't do that, just, all it takes is one car, and they ended up blocking a fire hydrant, but I think with some additional signage, that shouldn't be a problem if there's another event, so.
Yeah, but I heard really nothing when I drove by, and
Yep.
thought maybe they were on a break or something, but I drove down North Street,
Okay.
and I could hear a little bit more.
Well, they
but
always
there
had
was-
two bands going on. When the main stage was switching out, they had a smaller stage with somebody else playing. And
It wasn't really
no, it was.
noticeable. On North Street, there was no, I didn't see anybody parked on North Street.
No, it went well, and all right,
Yeah, good.
great.
Good, thank you.
you, gentlemen.
Okay, it's 7:20, so we'll ask Bob to come back and we'll talk about sewer rates.
30 seconds on something else that we're doing right now. Right now, we're doing a big sludge reduction at the treatment plant. I don't see, I'll let you guys know what we're doing. So we hired a company, it came in with this very long trailer, and it's got a centrifuge on it. So they're reducing our sludge. We hope to go from about 40,000 pounds to about 10,000 pounds in the process. We've been trying to do this for about a year and a half with our own little press, and we haven't gotten anywhere. So.
This is just to kind of clear out some of that residual.
All the old, well, whether it's old or it just keeps on, just recirculating. We're not catching up by any means. So one of the things that the EPA is saying that you can no longer store, your plant shouldn't be used to store sludge. And so they haven't yet forcefully said, you need to get to here, but they're saying you can't store that much sludge anymore. So read the writing. And so what we're doing is we hopefully by the end of this week we'll be down to about 10,000 pounds in our process. We're already down to about 27,000 pounds from close to 40. It was much overdue. So
This is something that we'll have to do occasionally, annually?
no, I hope it's one and done, to be honest with you. So once you get to that point, then you should be able to maintain with your own press. I mean, we can maintain, but even though with our loading being very high, we can still maintain what we're doing. And we're working with the industries that are working on loading. One other thing the EPA is kind of requesting or kind of asking us to think about is receiving septic loads from out of town. And so, I told him, I said, well, the rate for the out of town septic loads is much higher than the in town. And I said, so it has discouraged a lot of out of town loads coming to us. And they said, well, that's great, but I still think you're getting too much loading into that plant for it to handle. So, that might need a little more engineering than my background to prove whether it's good or bad. You need someone that has a better biological understanding of that, if it's too much or too little. So,
Okay, well, then just clean out, you describe it, and that will help us with some of those.
exactly, right. So,
Okay.
so the sewer rate, it's a much more pleasant number this year. We're looking at a 1% increase. So that's going to be basically for all the categories except for the septic loads are not going to change. And so, I met with Carolyn for a while. We went over a lot of our numbers, and we felt that was a really good, safe number to use.
So maybe for the record, you want to read the rates,
Yeah,
Michael, or you want me to?
Yeah,
I'll start on. Okay, so current Gill industrial customers, current rate is $13.09 per thousand, and the proposed rate would be $13.22 per thousand. Turner's Falls, Montague Center, Montague City, Lake Pleasant, current rate is $14.15 a thousand, and the proposed rate is $14.29 per thousand. 12-month flat rate, current rate is $782 a year. The proposed rate would be $790 per year. Miller's Falls, the current rate is $14.15 per thousand. Proposed rate is $14.29 per thousand. And note that we no longer receive truck and sludge. Septic in town and town of Gill is $80 per thousand, and out of town is $110 per thousand.
Interest rates coming in.
And interest rate is 14% annual, demand charge of $5, minimum bill $124 per year.
And I believe that interest rate is by statute.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to accept the rates as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion's made and seconded. Much better news than last year, although last year was still there.
Yeah, it was
It still
it was a
hurts.
shock
Hurts.
last year.
But things have been going well at the plant.
Yeah, I mean, we got a couple better contracts, especially for our sludge disposal. I mean, that was almost 250,000 reduction in that, so that's helped out a lot. And I'm actually trying to get an extension on that current contract because it's just working out really well. It's a good rate for us, so I'm trying to work with Veolia to get that extended now. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so motion, second.
Just a question regarding Gill. I know that they were as equally as upset about this last year's raise as pretty much everybody else was. Have we heard anything in recent months from them?
I spoke with the town administrator,
Right.
Gil. Yeah,
Right, yeah.
he gave me a call. I told him what we're doing for an interest rate, and he was very happy.
Okay.
So,
Great.
he didn't yell at me. Assuming he's happy.
When do you think residents will receive their bills just for?
They're going out, I know Eileen's preparing them now this week, so that's why we're pushing this a little
All
quicker.
right, any other questions?
No?
I would just make the observation that this is sort of the most settled, that the treatment plant's sort of operational budget and sewer rates have been at this time of year. You know, we talked about it being a really difficult 3-year transition period, where we were still exploring, then we were reacting to the initial results of the exploration, and then we were standardizing around a traditional process. So I'm just really pleased, and I want to thank Bob and his staff for all their efforts to really stabilize and get back to a point of equilibrium with the plant.
I would agree. I think that it's been difficult. You came into a very tumultuous situation.
Yeah, it was challenging.
I think I appreciate what you've done. And it seems like you're always making good forward progress on what's happening here, so let's.
As a side note, Tina Tyler has been an employee of the wastewater treatment plant for almost 32 years, is retiring at the end of this month. So if you see her,
Yes.
tell her to thank her for her services, please.
Great.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll take a vote on this.
Yeah,
All those in favor?
I,
Okay, good. Motion passed unanimously. Okay.
Steve, in regards to what Bob just said, can we draft up a, letter of gratitude? Or just-
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. A copy of the newer rates, sure. You can take mine if you want. Email. Okay, next we have, library director, you know if Linda's coming, or this is just a part-time sub, it looks like?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't spoken with her today.
She always provides us such good information
She does.
that, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward.
So her library substitute pool is really critical to making a fairly tight staffing operation work. And so when she identifies a qualified candidate who she can add to that cadre, she does so. I don't happen to know anything about Jerry Moran, but
So she sent it to us from vacation last week.
she has a master's in library science. She's been a reference and teaching librarian at GCC. She retired from that position. And so she would be someone who would not be available for a normal work schedule because of the state limits on hours that retirees can work. So that's what I would surmise.
Yep. Very good. I'll make a motion to appoint Jerry Moore as a library sub at $13 an hour, effective tomorrow, August 20th, 2019.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Is that J-E-R-Y
Jerimoran.
All right, Shea Theater facade.
So I know-
Anybody there?
I know that Josh Goldman is on his way here. He was commuting from a really substantial distance and thought that he might be pushing it to make for the 7:45 slot.
So let's talk about age.
Sounds great.
So this is a discussion to execute the FY 20 through 22 collective bargaining agreement with NAGE. So this is Chris's and Steve's baby.
Sure. Chris, would you like me to take a lead in
Yeah.
describing it? Okay. As I think everyone is, well, certainly everyone in this group is aware, all three of our contracts, those with the police, with the DPW and water pollution control, and with primarily administrative staff who work throughout the town, were up for renegotiation with an effective contract date of July 1st of this year. And so we were able to reach agreement with the Nage Employees Union, formerly referred to as TOMIA. It used to be the Town of Montague Employees Association, which was sort of an independent. They affiliated with the National Association of Government Employees as their long-term representative was transitioning to that organization and then transitioning out of that business. I'm happy to say that we had a very collegial and a very realistic bargaining process with the group. We've arrived at an agreement that is affordable to the town in the long term, that takes into account the fact that minimum wages in Massachusetts are going to be increasing in accordance with state regulations. And the main features of it, I think, would be that in each of the 3 years, there is a cost of living adjustment. It's 1% for FY20, 1.5 for FY21, and 1.5 for FY22. In that first year, we are also taking the additional action of essentially adjusting the 10-step scale that that everybody progresses on, okay? So historically, we've had steps 1 through 10, and there is between 2 and 2.5% increases in those steps. They vary somewhat. We have a fair number of staff who are already at step 10, as we don't have a lot of turnover in those positions. And again, understanding that there will be changes in minimum wages, we thought through what the best way to advance the scale would be, the bottom end of the scale. We decided it was best to essentially remove step 1. All right, so this scale will start at step 2 and then progress through a step 11 instead of step 10. The other features of this, modest changes to some of our shift differentials for staff who have second and third shifts in particular. That would affect people who are working on dispatch contracts. And generally speaking, most of the other changes were technical changes that reflect just updates in law. I don't know if there are further.
I believe there was 1 or 2 technical changes that were and ors or that were
Just grammatical.
right
changes.
revised.
Yeah, absolutely. As there always are.
It was
You know,
more
the
like
other.
cleanup.
Right. You know, there was some work to make sure that we were aligning dispatchers, elements of their work with elements of the contractual agreements that the police or town hall staff may have. They are, of course, you know, emergency staff, and so they don't get the same consideration of time off around holidays and things of that nature. So we brought things into alignment with other contracts there. Approval of this contract, which the Nage Association members have already approved, and this board approved in the form of an initial MOA in executive session, will allow us to place an item on the special town meeting agenda this fall that would fund these contracts for the present year, and the expected cost would be in the range of $29,000 to fund the contract for not only for these individuals, but also there are other non-unit staff whose contracts who are not under contract and who are not members of union. For instance, our health director, right, is not a union member. It's a little bit confusing, the quilt work of this. The building inspector is, the health director isn't. But the contracts their non-contracted staff also move commensurate with the
And do we mirror
contracted
those
staff.
folks?
Yes,
Those-
yeah.
Okay.
I think it's an excellent contract. I think it works well for both sides, and that's really where you want to get to in these.
And that 29,000, that's the total amount over the 3 years or per year?
No, that would be our first year.
First year.
That would be the impact on FY20 budget.
Yep.
So we would be appropriating to make sure the departmental budgets all had that.
Yep. That was good.
Okay, anything else? Any other comments, Chris?
Nope, I think it's covered.
Make a motion to approve the FY 20 to 22 collective bargaining agreement with the NAGE employee union.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Jeff, do you have a question?
You know, Steve, can you explain to me why the minimum wage, I mean, is the lower step, whole lower step below the minimum wage?
Presently, our lowest step is just above $14 an hour. Okay, and so the minimum wage will be at 15, I believe, in 22. And so there's a natural progression, and we just want to make sure we don't wind up in a compromised position.
All right, any other questions? All right, I'll take a vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Linda, you did such a good job.
You're all set.
We already approved it. I didn't know you were going to be here, I apologize.
Okay, oh, that's all right.
So do you want to give us, we did approve the appointment of Jerry to the library sub. I don't know if you want to give us a couple minutes.
Oh, sure. She's got decades of library experience. She's got a master's degree in library science. She's retired. She comes into the Montague Center Library at least once, sometimes twice a week, and she asked about subbing opportunities. So,
Good, you always find some really great folks, and it
Yeah.
seems to cost us very little to get that level of expertise, so thanks for
yeah,
that.
okay, sure. And I don't expect her to work, too many hours, just an occasional fill-in now and then.
Good.
So, okay.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Just a note, we should talk about minor moving.
Yes.
All right, so next
Yep.
is,
Okay.
we're gonna hold off on
Hold this back.
the.
Yeah.
Um, This is for a sign for MCTV. They'd like to place a 36 by 24 wooden A-frame sign on the corner of Avenue A and Second Street at 4 PM Monday to Friday for a year, I guess, probably until they permits. I'm guessing this is direct people to the MCTV
So
station.
Dean's on vacation right now.
Yes?
I wasn't sure about the gear thing, but we mainly were doing, we're having a film festival. So we just wanted a poster to advertise and just put something on a sandwich board, a poster on a sandwich board.
Okay.
So that was pretty much what that was all about.
Okay, so it might be an occasional use over the next year?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I believe they're, rather than a wood A-frame, it's called a marquee, I believe, is the correct word. It's
Got
like
me.
Right.
It's like an A.
Probably a couple different names.
It's got to be limited to 2 square feet in size.
36 by 24 is.
Well, the permit says it's the conditions, general conditions. You can grant an exception. So, I apologize. You can grant the exception.
This is about the size, it's 36 inches high, 2 feet wide, is about the size of the ones for the listings put on the newslet. The fat, is it Richardson's fat? Is that
Yep.
what you put the one down there? That's
Fat
about the
fashion.
size, yeah.
It's pretty much
About the
standard.
standard size.
Yeah, 3 by 2
Right.
seems standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, the terms of the license indicate that the select board can alter the
Move on.
requirements. Yes.
So I'll entertain a motion for the authorization for the frame for occasional use throughout the year.
Yep, I'll make that motion for 34 Second Street, MCTV, 36 inches by 24 inches for wood A-frame, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, through the end of June 2020.
Second.
The motion's made and seconded.
I'll just add, I don't see it on here, but if there is any sort of fee, that we'll waive the fee, as
Okay, that's what I was actually,
as I've been doing lately,
Graham.
historically.
Okay, so motion's made and seconded to approve and waive any fee, if so applicable. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So voted unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. DPW update.
Sure. As people may have noticed, we not only offered our notice to proceed last week, but work began to proceed last week. DPW clearing has, the site for the new DPW has been cleared largely. There was an effort by members of the committee who went through, evaluated some mature trees that were in particular on the boundary with the cemetery to make sure that those were, all consideration was given to allowing those healthy, strong trees to remain in place. This happened when I was away, but I know that David Jensen was involved in that process, and I believe Mark Fairbrother was as well. The contractor, BWC Construction, was here along with our architect, our owner's project manager, and other interests from the town to review and basically have our pre-construction meeting today. We've sort of started the 300-day clock on the project. The expected completion date is June 7th of 2020. We are thrilled to be in a position where we are beginning the project in a fashion that should allow us to get the building up and in place so that work can continue over the course of the winter. We're waiting on a final construction schedule, but we're pretty confident that everything is proceeding in a great fashion. There are a couple things that we're going to make sure we do. One, we spoke with the contractor to make certain that, if there is a funeral service or the like occurring at the graveyard, that they would show respect and consideration. They alluded to the fact that they recently did a project immediately adjacent to a cemetery, and that, that was their practice. That, those ceremonies don't last that long, and they seem to be a very respectful outfit. I don't know if there's anything more that I can tell you at this point, other than that it's now full steam ahead. I did get at least one question from a neighbor who was concerned about screening of the trees and et cetera, and I'm going to be meeting with that neighbor, and we're going to do everything we can, to be supportive of that local neighborhood, while also acknowledging that we are building a DPW facility there, and something simply will have to happen.
It was been amazing to see the number of trees, the
logs.
the size of the logs.
Yeah.
Really on that lot. Done a good job, and it looks like they have left a good buffer, assuming that that's about where their final footprint is. I noticed that the cemetery, you can see through it, but not, it's pretty screened. From the road, there seem to be 2 or 3 rows of trees left.
Yeah, and the intent on the site plan calls for lower growth evergreens to be planted along the internal perimeter, if you will, of the site, so that once the DPW is built, the parking lots are in place immediately adjacent to that, encircling it, in particular on the Turner's Falls Road side. There'll be a new level of, call it understory, if you will, to provide further shielding from both sound and sight.
Good. Good. Looking good.
Yep, sounds good.
Steps in the right direction.
Are there any action steps at this time that are taken or that we can start thinking about taking as far as the property that we're going to be vacating? So the current garage and the annex building here?
Well, I can tell you that one of Tom Bergeron's to-dos for the coming year is to create that transition plan of moving from point A to point B. I would assume that will be very challenging because all of our staff are always busy in the Department of Public Works. But he's been taking like preliminary steps in that direction. But really, as we get into next spring, that transition planning will really come into focus. There's a lot that's in those buildings that simply needs to be there and needs to be sheltered until there's a new space to move them into. I would assume that we'll prioritize getting materials and equipment out of 500 Avenue A, relative to getting it out of the grounds maintenance area here in the annex. But I'm going to leave those plans to be developed by Tom, and we'll discuss them then, and we'll bring them to the board, so you know.
Very good.
What about future use of that building? Is there anything we can contemplate
Sure.
early on next year to start thinking about?
Yeah, I believe a phase one environmental, really relying on historical records, has already been done on that building. A phase two will, at some point, probably be required. It is the town's expectation that we will move that back towards, some commercial industrial use in that area. As it has the right bones for certain types of operations and could be a terrific space. It's also actually very nicely situated immediately by the canal and the bike path. So I have no doubt that towards the end of next summer, we'll be contemplating what an RFP for reuse of that building might look like.
So
I'm thinking maybe before I was thinking sooner than that.
that's where I was going. I was wondering if there was things we could be doing now, or not now, but in the nearer future.
Maybe right after the first of the year or something.
To move it along so we get somebody in.
I can discuss that with Walter and with Tom, and we can figure out the logistics of that. I understand the board's interest is in making sure that it's put into reuse as quickly as possible.
I mean, if we expect the building to be done by June, it would be great if we had some plans that we're slating like in August timeframe or something to, for targets for people to maybe
Right.
have the building available to them.
Right.
Of course, we can build contingencies, but the sooner it goes from first one use to another use seems to always be better than going from one use to vacant to another use.
Yeah, I think what we're thinking is getting it off the backs of the taxpayers.
Yeah, I understand that. And right now, I would say let's watch the DPW project progress. And I think the middle of next winter, we'll have a very good sense of whether that project is running as we expect on time or whether not, and we can begin to contemplate that, absolutely.
Okay. All right. What time is it now? Want to give some folks from the Shea, are you from the Shea?
From MCTV.
Already come and gone, all approved.
All done.
Oh, really? Did it changed on the schedule time, or?
Our times are projected.
Okay, I was filling in for Dean, and he told me to get here at least by.
Desiree,
She handled it.
took care of it for you.
Good.
So we've gone ahead and approved that, okay.
All right.
Well, let's do our special town meeting, thank you. And then, if we don't have anybody from, the Shea, we'll have to have.
Sure. So in terms of special town meeting, there are obviously any number of important pieces of business that have to be addressed every fall. We try to make the date as close to the beginning of October as possible to allow setting of the tax rate, because there are oftentimes adjustments that are made. And so we are looking at October 2nd as our expected date. If we were to look presently, it is a fairly robust agenda, because, we hope that we'll be in a position to have more than just the one union contract, and that would add some additional articles. We are anticipating that, bear with me, gentlemen. One project that we're anticipating is that we have a pretty badly leaking roof on our Unity Park Fieldhouse. I know it feels like Steve showed up and suddenly we're dealing with one roof after another, but they were all past due, is the reality. And as I announced, I think at our last board meeting, we received great news from our state representative, who was able to successfully lobby and secure a $25,000 set aside to help fund that project in the current year's state budget. And so we're working right now to nail down that plan, and we'll be bringing that to the board along with other warrant articles by the middle of September. You need to post the warrant for special town meeting 14 days in advance. So, we'll be right up against it with our September 9th meeting, getting things into place so that we can finalize them the following week on the 16th. Okay? This date has already been reviewed and approved by the schools. We would plan to have it at Turner's Falls High School at 6:30. And the moderator is available, and I understand that members of the board are available as well.
That Unity Park roof, that would be a full repair, full replacement, not just a temporary repair?
That would be a full replacement,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So you're working on getting pricing for that, for the meeting, or?
We have, yes. We've already had one really solid quote from a firm that's doing other business in town. This obviously would need to go out to bid, and so we might anticipate putting it out to bid on an accelerated time frame ahead of having an appropriation, in hopes that we'll have an appropriation to work with, so we can get it done this November. If we don't, we can make it through until spring. It's a leaky roof, and if anyone were to go to the playground side and to look at the roof, you can see the obvious degradation of the shingles there.
Yeah,
It's accelerating.
I actually reached out to John about a month ago and told him to be in contact with us about the roof because it was so awful looking.
Yeah.
So let's try to get that, so we're ready to, when we get an appropriation, assuming we do, we can get that going.
Yeah.
So we can get it taken care of this year before any other interior damage.
I realize that 20 to 25 years from now, we'll have a lot of roofs coming due.
That's okay with me. Michael?
Thanks.
Michael can deal with it.
I'll take care of it. I'll put it in my calendar now. Curse Steve's name in 2045.
Okay, anything, I guess,
Yeah.
special, any topics not anticipated?
Sure, while we're waiting for our Shea colleagues to arrive.
Well, we're gonna have to do that soon, so.
Yes, and we could probably handle it.
Okay.
See if we can handle it without him. I'll just make note that, as was reported in the Greenfield Reporter, Mass DOT has made a decision that in order to reduce the cycle time for waves going over the General Pierce Bridge, that they are going to be implementing a no left turn from Mountain Road, that's down from Poet's Seat, over the bridge. That'll just require that people make a slight adjustment as they leave Greenfield to come to Montague. They could go over across Hope Street or a number of other ways to get here. They are expecting to have that in place and functional tomorrow.
And I've been actually avoiding that bridge, but I also noticed that their note said, or also in the newspaper too, mentioned that there's going to be signage in Greenfield before you head up to Mountain Road, advising people of limited access on the general bridge. I think that's gonna be a concern for folks, I think, in East Greenfield. The folks in Donna can't turn left, whether they're gonna have to turn right and then see people making U-turns and driveways.
Yeah.
So hopefully they do a good job of signage
Yeah.
to prevent that.
I did see some commentary from law enforcement officers in Greenfield on that thread with great concerns about how that was going to affect their positions.
So we'll have to watch. I guess I know that bridge is problematic for people. So like I said, I've honestly just been trying to avoid going that way if I can. It makes sense.
Personally, I've purposely not avoided it as it happens, and I've done it a lot of different times a day. And there are times when you have to wait a few minutes, and that feels inconvenient. It's hard because when they first timed those signals, they based them on a typical travel time for that distance. But a lot of people drive really slowly, especially if they have low vehicles or heavy-weighted vehicles. And so people are crossing the bridge at very slow speeds, which only adds to the need to have the heavier cycle time on the lights. So,
And last Thursday night was fun around
I
six.
crossed it on my bike the other day. I was in a pretty long line coming across it, so I light bulb went off about halfway across, and I went, wait a minute, this could change. I hadn't thought of that.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Last Thursday night around 6 o'clock, all three lights were flashing red.
Really?
It must have been a power surge.
I don't know what it was, but
Yeah.
the Greenfield police were very quick to respond.
The good news is that DOT is seeing that there was an issue, they're responding to it, trying to make it the best of the situation. And this just keeps the bridge in a higher level of concern for them, so the timeline, let's just hope stays what they plan. The rehab of that starts when they project next year.
Hopefully, all will go on schedule.
That's all we can say.
Far ahead of schedule would be better.
Okay.
Okay, so, let's see. Other updates, the most fun and exciting thing of all is we received our letter today from the Department of Housing and Community Development notifying the town of Montague that we have been awarded an FY 2019 Community Development Fund grant of $612,065 from the Massachusetts Community Development Block Grant Program Fund. So this is the kind of news that you wait anxiously for, even when you know you have an outstanding proposal. The main features of it this year, and this is one of our smaller grant years, relatively speaking. You can get 1.35 million across any 2-year span. This includes the Spinner Park Restoration Project, and it also includes funding for the community service projects, social service agency projects that you all heard testament to. Those were with LifePath, the Brick House, the Western Mass Training Consortium, and the Montague Catholic Social Ministries.
All great programs.
Absolutely. So there's lots to do before, there hasn't been the official, there's lots of paperwork to execute. There's some details to wrap up on the Spinner Park project in particular. When our planner returns to the office, he and I will engage around that process. But we are thrilled to have received this grant, and it would be only appropriate to acknowledge and thank the Franklin County Regional Housing and Redevelopment Authority as they really lead that process for us, the grant application, as well as contract management process every year.
Been a good partner.
They have.
And a provider for us in administration and procurement of these grants. Absolutely.
Okay, so more to come on that in the future certainly, but that's our quick today note. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sorry, did you say 612,065?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Is that got anything for lighting on the avenue, or is that a?
No, that would be a future project. We have, 2 years ago, we redeployed some money to do all of the bid-ready plans and specifications for changes up and down the avenue. It would take multiple rounds of funding in order to realize all of those projects. Spinner Park project, of course, was one that had been bumped from the previous year. We were going to do a sort of soft makeover of it, and the board viewed that as kind of an insufficient approach. And so this is the much more comprehensive makeover of that park.
That'll really, that whole area now will really be revitalized.
It will be, I think, a tremendous asset.
There had been some concerns about that park design.
So-
Last time we heard, have those kind of come to fruition?
No, until the grant announcement was made, and we knew that the resources were there, we didn't put a great deal of effort
makes
into
sense,
that.
yeah.
I'll remind the board that feedback had been solicited on a number of occasions in a number of ways, and we had hundreds of people who had indicated their support for the plan. There was a group of people, and they're great citizens who stopped in at the Selectboard meeting late January, I think it was, and they've asked us to revisit one element of that plan, and that is the to-do work that I mentioned sits before us still. That would making changes as they had requested would certainly require some new engineering and likely additional expense. So I don't want to comment further on it because I just haven't had the follow-up.
I was just curious if there had been.
I'll also note that it is possible that Walter has had some conversation with members of that group of people who spoke with us.
Yep.
I wasn't part of them.
Sure. Now that we got the money, we can.
I think it's an excellent plan that's been presented.
I do too.
And it opens up, the importance for me was that as I drive by there and look more and more every time, it is really closed off in the back. And by making the proposed changes, it will open that up into a much more receptive space and keep it brighter for the, for better safety, that there's not gonna be dark corners and that, it will have more visibility. So anyway, we'll cross any bridges when we get there.
Sure.
So let's talk about the Shea facade upgrade. What can you tell us about the proposal and the,
Sure. So the
plans?
request that we received, and a member of the Shea Theater Board of Directors, Josh Goldman, brought this to our attention and is hopefully going to burst through the door at any moment, is the installation of a foam cornice. And I gave everyone a picture of this. It would kind of add an architectural detail that would extend up above the present Avenue A roof line. It would in the process, right now if you stand across the street at Hubie's and you look at the Shea Theater, you see the beautiful theater, but you also see its HVAC system on the roof. And so this would be a foam cornice at the interface of the building's front knee wall, which would extend the perceived height of the building from the street, hide the HVAC unit from the street, and bring the color treatment above the windows and doors to the top of the building to create a more integrated look. The profile would be 32 inches tall, of which 26 inches would extend above the existing roof line. They are also proposing to install additional lighting, 2 up and down lights on the building facade below and to the left and right side of the existing Shea Theater sign, SHEA. There was a belief that it will improve the visual aesthetics of the building generally and also add more of a theatrical kind of look to it. I ran this by Walter. He felt it was, a very nice visual proposal aesthetically for the downtown. I checked in and reviewed the deed. There are no specific preservation restrictions that would keep us from doing this aesthetically. I spoke with Chris Sawyer-Lacano, who works as our preservation architect for the town, and he did not have any concerns if there were no restrictions in place. He didn't see a problem with it. You can see here, I did check because we're putting a new roof on the back of that building, not on the front, but on the back of that building. It shouldn't interfere in any way with any new roof. Also, as it appears to attach, it attaches to the front of the building and it doesn't wrap over the parapet. So to the extent that a rubber membrane roof may come up and over and be lapped and tied in on that parapet, it should not have any issue. If the board elects to offer their blessing to the Shea Theater to proceed with this, I would just ask that it be subject to concurrence with our roof expert, that there's nothing here that would create a warranty issue or other problem for the roof. My initial conversation with him tonight suggested it would probably be fine, but he would talk about it with those at the Shea and make sure that there was nothing unexpected.
right, and the ones, these that I've seen, although it says its core structure is foam, they usually have some sort of a faux finish on them that looks more like stone or granite or something. Doesn't look like a piece of
Yeah.
styrofoam up there, right?
They're absolutely not. Their concern is the aesthetics of the building
Right.
and tying it together with the other elements of the existing facade of the building.
I guess where I'm going is this is a common construction practice now
Yeah.
on the car dealerships, for instance.
Yeah.
They look like they're made out of granite, but they're really foam with this material on the front that creates a false facade.
Yeah.
They look quite nice.
Yeah, I think you'll see the same visual color trends that are in the existing woodwork and sign replicated.
They've done an excellent job on that.
It's hard to fault the aesthetics when you go inside that building. It's pretty striking.
I like the looks of it, but the only thing I'm wondering, what about the birds or the pigeons or anything? Will they peck at it being home?
Well, I mean, they're designed for
Yeah,
this,
it's a
so.
common product, so.
I think the way to do it is what Steve suggested, and let's let, let Walter and Chris just confer a bit more with the board and maybe get a bit more detail for us.
So you would like to have him come back?
No, I'm okay
I'm fine with it, I think it's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just
So-
saying that your suggestion was to just have a little bit more,
Yeah, have our roof expert take a look at it specifically.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
that Chris?
Our roof expert? No, it's Jack Skypack of Northeast Roof Consultants.
Okay, so we entertain a motion?
I'll entertain a motion to, what am I allowing? Authorize the Shea Theater to move forward with their facade improvements that they're requesting.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded, any discussion?
Do we have a cost on that?
That's their.
Doesn't matter.
They're,
to us.
they're paying for that.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So voted unanimous. And I think, Michael said that their cost, they've done a great job of fundraising and Steve mentioned really improvements to the facilities. Yeah, I'm sure this is. Okay, anything other for topics not anticipated?
No, sir.
Our next scheduled meeting is September 9th. Do you see any need for we did have a tentative, if we needed it next week, do you think there's gonna be any need?
Generally, I'm more comfortable having the placeholder for the meeting. Are you all available is the question.
Next week?
I can be if need be.
I would say the same, I could be.
Yeah, it probably could be.
So I will confirm by Wednesday if there is a need for the meeting. Presently, we don't have the agenda to support it, but if there's something that comes through that is of great importance, I certainly just because it would be a 2-week lag otherwise, and/or we'd have to be looking at September 2nd. And maybe I should ask you that question. Sorry, September 3rd, right, is the Tuesday?
No,
That would be worse.
That's fair week.
Yeah, that's right.
Not happening.
I think if we need to, my concern is that I don't mind waiting until September 9th if we don't have much. But even if we have an agenda that's relatively short, like tonight, I'd almost rather do that than have a meeting on the 9th that stretches
3 hours.
3 hours or 2.5 hours, which has happened a couple of times. So why don't you take a look at what is coming in and if there's anything that needs to happen. If there are things that could push a little, then we'll wait.
Comes
But it
Josh.
seems to me that we had something scheduled. Was it the 9th or the meeting after?
The 16th.
16th, okay.
Yes.
All right, well, let us know.
Yes, and I'll just note that Josh Goldman is here. And Josh, we thank you for making a very long haul to get here. Unfortunately, you're a few minutes after we did the business.
Okay.
The board,
92
the board
seconds.
approved, the board approved the requests.
Oh, great, thank you.
Pending, I'm gonna ask that you confer, and I'll be part of that.
Okay.
With a gentleman from Northeast Roof Consultants to
Okay.
make sure that there's nothing about this that would affect the warranty.
Good.
If you don't mind, we could ask the question, do you know anything about whether this, I don't wanna say it's bird resistant, but obviously, we're not creating a pigeon suit here, are we?
No, so the general plan, and the builders will ultimately, share plans obviously with the building inspector, but the idea is that a small, approximately 3-foot wall of pressure treated will be constructed on top of the parapet wall. And then that wall will be faced on the front with
Okay.
plywood, and probably the back with plywood, and then it will be sheathed with metal to make it water resistant and also tie it in more rigidly to the rear of the parapet wall.
So it's not like this example,
No.
because it's protruding above, so.
No, that's,
So that's even more reason, well, we're still, I think, agree with the concept,
Yeah.
but we just wanna make sure the roofing contractors are all,
We wanna make sure we don't lose roof warranties
Yes.
or anything of that nature,
Yes.
Josh.
yeah, the
So-
contractor's been up there and had a look, but we can definitely ask them to confirm.
We can put them in touch with Jack, so I'll
Sure.
facilitate that
That
through
would be
you
great,
tomorrow.
yes.
now they may have some things that they would suggest to tie it in with the roofing to seal it better.
Yeah, great. And the idea is that we'll actually mimic, the cornice manufacturer will mimic the lower cornice on the building, so that picture is sort of a generic cornice. But it will mimic the existing treatment that's sort of midway up the building, and it will kind of recapitulate that at the top. And this color scheme will be kind of the same, so
And it's
it'll tie it
only
all
in the front.
together. Only in the front, yeah. It'll probably sort of just wrap a little bit around the corner to die into the corner elegantly, but.
That's good,
Yeah.
that's good. Okay, so I don't think there's any need to revoke that, so, good.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Josh. Okay, so, let's see what we need, Monday, September 9th is our next officially scheduled meeting, we'll keep folks posted, and have an agenda out by Wednesday, end of the day, if we need to have a meeting next week. Is that right?
I'll have the agenda out Thursday. I'll let you know if we see an agenda shaping up by Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Okay, anything else? No, public works, I'll have
Motion to adjourn? Second?
Motion made, seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Do you realize
Gentlemen,
we-
please do stay to sign documents.
No,